Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our Kaspa Miniseries. I'm Alex, and we are continuing our mission to compress the epic 7.5-hour The Bitcoin Takeover podcast into small, powerful highlight episodes.
That's right. And I'm Jamie. Nice to see you again. In our first episode, Why Kaspa Exists, we unpacked the huge technical reasons behind the project, Bitcoin's speed limits, orphan blocks, and the genius of the block DAG. It was a total deep dive into the what.
But that conversation left a huge question hanging in the air. If you're going to challenge the foundations of Bitcoin, who do you have to be? What drives someone to take on a problem that massive?
Exactly. So today we're shifting from the protocol to the person. This episode is all about the who, Yonatan Sompolinsky's journey. We're pulling out the personal stories from that marathon interview to understand the mind behind Kaspa. And trust me, his story is not what you'd expect.
He's not a flashy CEO or a lifelong coder. His story starts in a much quieter place, the world of mathematics.
Right. Vlad kicks off the interview by asking him about his background, and it's clear Yonatan is first and foremost an academic. He described his entry into crypto not as some grand vision at first, but as an academic necessity. He needed a lab project to help him transition from mathematics to computer science.
That's so different from the typical founder story. He also made it clear that while he was interested in Bitcoin early on, he was only, quote, passively involved. He said, "I don't think I can contribute a lot other than handing out interesting thoughts and challenging the status quo. It took me time to contribute to crypto. It wasn't from day one."
He sounds more like a curious observer than a revolutionary at that point. His first real project, the Ghost Protocol, came from this academic curiosity. He and his advisor were simply fascinated by the question of what happens when you speed up Bitcoin. But this project threw him right into the deep end of the crypto world.
It really did. And he shared a fantastic, humbling story about it. After they published the paper on Ghost, he went to a crypto conference and met Gregory Maxwell, a legendary Bitcoin core developer. Yonatan explained the protocol to him, and what happened next was a classic welcome to the real world moment for an academic.
He said he was amazed because Maxwell immediately spotted a flaw in the protocol. Yonatan recalled he didn't even need to think about it, quote unquote. He admitted that he and his team already knew there was a problem, but it took them a while to figure it out. Maxwell saw it instantly.
That must have been both intimidating and incredibly valuable. It shows the difference between theory on a whiteboard and the practical, adversarial reality of building secure protocols. It's one thing to design a system. It's another to defend it against some of the smartest minds in the world who are actively trying to break it.
Exactly. And I think that experience shaped his journey from being a pure researcher to becoming a builder. But it wasn't a straight line. In fact, the story of how Kaspa actually launched is one of the most interesting parts of the interview. It was anything but a smooth, calculated product release.
You can say that again. He was actually against launching it, wasn't he?
Completely. He said, "I was really against launching Kaspa almost. I did everything that I could to prevent the launch or for a smooth launch." By late 2021, he felt so uncomfortable with the idea of launching a new platform that he told his investors he didn't see a clear business model. He even consulted Nick Carter, a well-known figure in the space, who advised him, "If you don't think you want to do this full force, then don't launch."
So what did he do? How did we get from don't launch to the Kaspa we have today?
He came up with what he himself called a very bad idea, a game net. The idea was to launch an incentivized testnet, but in a way that he thought would discourage serious participation. He genuinely thought, this will be mined by 3 people. It was just a way to showcase the research in a live environment without trying to create a serious monetary asset.
So it was basically a researcher's experiment, not a founder's product launch.
Precisely. But then something happened that he didn't expect at all. He said, people voted otherwise. Miners from all over the world, most of whom he didn't know, just started mining it. The hash rate grew incredibly fast, and he and the 1.5 devs working on it were completely unprepared.
Wow, so the community essentially forced his hand. They saw the value in what he had built, even when he was hesitant.
They absolutely did. The network got so much activity so quickly that after 2 weeks, it halted. They had to debug it and relaunch with a second Genesis block. Yonatan described the whole thing as horrendous compared to Bitcoin's immaculate launch. But then he reframed it in a fascinating way.
How so?
He said, I do think this is actually a feature, because the chaotic, unplanned launch proved that it wasn't some polished, centralized project being pushed by a team. As he put it wasn't an attempt from a team or from my side to push a new token, rather it was a vote by the people, so to speak.
That's an incredible perspective. The messy launch became proof of its decentralized grassroots origin. It shows he was truly a researcher who was pulled into the role of a builder by the sheer force of a community forming around his idea.
And that reluctant leadership style seems to be a core part of who he is. Vlad asked him if he wished he had stayed anonymous like Satoshi, and his answer was very revealing. He said, for me personally, of course, I would prefer to be anonymous. I don't like the burden of being around.
That's a heavy statement. Most founders are the face of their project, constantly in the spotlight. He seems to want the opposite.
He does. He feels it wouldn't be genuine to be anonymous while he's still so heavily involved in the core innovation. But his long-term goal is clear. He said, I aspire in the long term to not be around. At the moment, this will no longer be the case. I'll be the first to run out of the window. His loyalty is to the protocol and its completion, not to being a public figure.
It really paints a picture of a person driven by the intellectual challenge and the technology itself rather than by ego or fame. And to round out the personal side, they even touched on some of his non-crypto life.
Yeah, it was a nice moment of levity. He mentioned his first computer was an early Macintosh, and that as a teenager, he wasn't a coding prodigy. He was busy playing video games like Lotus and Space Invaders.
And when asked about his childhood heroes, he named Garry Kasparov, the chess grandmaster. You can really see the connection, a deep respect for strategic, mathematical, and intellectual pursuits.
Absolutely. So when you put it all together, Yonatan's journey is one of a mathematician who stumbled into crypto out of academic necessity, got a real-world education from the best in the Bitcoin space, and then reluctantly built a protocol that a community embraced before he even did.
He's a founder who values the integrity of the system over a polished launch and who would rather see the technology succeed on its own than stay in the spotlight. It's a journey that explains so much about Kaspa's culture, focused on the tech, a bit messy, but fundamentally driven by a grassroots community.
A perfect way to put it. And that's our look into the who behind Kaspa. Join us next time as we dive into another key topic from this marathon podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Kaspa Miniseries.